Alright lads, how's it going? Welcome back to another of my War Thunder vehicle reviews. Today we're going to be taking a look at the A6M6c. This is a new rank 3 battle rating 4.7 premium fighter for the Japanese tech tree. This Zero is a free reward for the ongoing battle pass. This means you will not have to buy into the battle pass, but you will have to reach the rank of 50, which is very achievable if you play the game daily or at least semi-weekly. The A6M6c is a very late war Zero. It had additional armour, firepower, but retained the same engine and general flight characteristics. But of course, it had a lot more weight compared to the earlier Zeros, something which significantly affects the performance of this plane, but we'll get into that later. As I said, to unlock this Zero, you're going to have to get to rank 50 in the ongoing battle pass. You'll then have to put the plane in your lineup for the cost of 10,000 silver lions. Being a turn fighting plane, I'd always recommend getting the expert in Ace qualifications. It just helps you with that G tolerance a little bit. To unlock the expert crew, it's going to cost you 240,000 silver lions, and for the ace, 700 golden eagles. But moving on to the repair cost, and as you'd expect being a premium, it is pretty low. It's under 1,000 silver lions, for a total of 890 SL in realistic battles. Moving on to the rewards, and in realistic battles and with a premium account, you'll have an RP modifier of 462% and a silver line modifier of 526%. In many ways, the A6M6c is an Americanized Zero. I mean, it's put on a ton of weight and bought a shitload of guns to compensate for it. If you do enjoy these sorts of reviews, then please do consider leaving a like and subscribing. Alright, moving on to the engine and flight characteristics. You might be asking yourself, just why am I bullying this plane so much? Well, it's all down to its weight. As I said, this is a very late war Japanese fighter. Basically, in the late World War II, the Americans were basically bombing the shit out of Tokyo with high-level bombers. Similar to what the British and Americans are doing in Germany, basically firebombing and levelling entire cities. Dresden Part 2, Electric Boogaloo. To counter this, the Japanese Army and Navy both started designing more heavily armoured aircraft, in order to take on the bigger, better equipped bombers. Japan, just like Germany at the time, was running very scarce on resources, so while they were adding more weight and weaponry to their aeroplane designs, they couldn't really produce more powerful engines. This resulted in the A6M6c having the same engine as pretty much all the other Zeros, the Nakajima SAKO 31A. As you can imagine, this led to a heavier plane powered by the same engine, which led to a considerably less power to weight ratio compared to the other Zeros, particularly the earlier Zeros, which had not much in terms of protection or sustained combat endurance. For example, the A6M6c is a rank 3 battle rating 4.7. It has a climb rate of 10.8 meters per second. Now if you compare the other premium in the Japanese tech tree, the A6M5co, it is a rank 4, but is also at battle rating 4.7, but has a climb rate of 16.9 meters per second. If we again go back to the A6M6, you can see that it has a turn time of 20 seconds. And while the stat cards aren't everything in War Thunder, and certainly should be taken with a grain of salt, the A6M5co's turn rate is 16 seconds. So not only does the A6M6 turn worse, it also climbs worse. So you can't outclimb anybody, and while you can outturn most people, you do not have that legendary Zero turn rate. Spitfires will dunk on you, and you can't play this plane as a regular Zero. It's not mindless turning. You actually do have to conserve your energy and actually think before making a move. While none of the Zeros are paid to win and that easy to fly to be honest, but they've always had very good climb rates as well as turn rates, which means if you mess up, you can dive away and then pretty much just outclimb your opponent. As long as you stay on a similar energy level to your opponent, unless they're in an equally manoeuvrable plane as you can simply just outturn them and basically just run away from the fight. You can't really do that with the A6M6. You essentially have the climb rate of an early American boom and zoomer. Like even the P-40Cs have a better climb rate than you in this thing. Apart from the poor climb rate and turn rate, you have a somewhat decent top speed of 543. It is slightly better than the other Zeros in game, but you will get dunked on by pretty much any other nation, with the exception of maybe the Spitfires. One other thing to mention about the engine is that you do have limited WEP. It's about 8 to 10 minutes, and once you run out of it, you are losing a significant portion of your engine power, which again goes back into the negative of the climb rate and the turn rate, because once you lose that additional engine power, it significantly affects both. But just like the other Zeros, it does have combat, takeoff and landing flaps as well as an arrestor gear, which I think is pretty ironic considering most Japanese aircraft carriers were sunk by the time this thing was in mass production. But to conclude, there's not really too much to say about the performance of this plane, at least positives. It's big, bloated, it's heavy, it doesn't have that magic that the earlier Zeros have. You can't really out-climb things. While you do have a similar turn rate to most things, it's no good just being average, is it, lads? You can still out-turn pretty much all the American fighters, but Spitfires and some of the Yaks are going to give you a really, really hard time if they know what they're doing. I've been killed a few times by the Focke-Wulfs. They can get pretty lucky. They've got a pretty decent turn rate now. While this is a free premium zero, technically if you do grind it out, it doesn't play like a zero. It plays like a, I don't know how to, this is kind of racist, but it plays what you'd think of an American. It's just big, heavy, with a shitload of guns, which doesn't really help you if you can't get those guns on target, as I've said before. But speaking of guns, let's see what's so magical about them. Alright, the firepower department, everyone's favourite. Like all the other Zeros, the A6M6 does have the same two 20mm Type 99 Mod 2 cannons. You have 250 rounds in total, with 125 rounds per gun. They have a fire rate of 490 shots per minute, making them relatively slow firing guns. This is both a good and a bad thing. While it does give you quite a long time on the trigger, it doesn't really give you that burst firepower that you really need in a scissor engagements. You just can't get enough cannon rounds downrange in a very short period of time, which usually means you need several passes on an opponent. The way that this Zero differs from pretty much every other Zero is the fact that it has three 13.2mm Type 3 machine guns. For all intents and purposes, these are essentially just M2 Browning machine guns. They have 710 rounds in total, with 798 rounds per minute. While these guns obviously aren't copies of the M2 Brownings, they act pretty much the same way in game. They have different ballistics, of course, but they do the same type of thing. The big heavy rounds that have incendiary ammunition. You hit people with these, it sets them on fire. Pretty much the same as the Americans. You're not going to knock people out in single hits, but you are going to start a lot of fires. Which, in combination with your somewhat decent turn rate, it does make this playing pretty lethal, as long as you can keep your nose on a target. The combination of the incendiary tipped machine guns, as well as the slow firing but heavy hitting 20mm, does make the A6M6 pretty good in a dogfight. Although, as I said, as long as you can keep your nose on the enemy, which if it's British or Russian, you probably are going to struggle with it, lads. But this Zero can carry more than just guns. You can carry both bombs and rockets. We'll start with the latter. First up, we have the Type 3 No. 1 Mod 28. These travel at 400 meters per second and contain 0.6 kilograms of TNT. These rockets are small, but you can carry more of them, at least compared to our next rocket, which is the Type 3 No. 6 Mod 27. This travels at 270 meters per second, but contains a lot more explosive filler, with 2.5 kilos. Japan isn't really well known for its rockets, which is a shame because Japan does lack a good ground striking aircraft. While the Japanese are kings in naval ground attack, in tank realistic, no Japanese planes really have a high amount of ordnance, at least compared to American and Soviet planes. But as I said, you can also carry bombs in this plane. Up first, we have the 60 kilo Navy Type 97. As you can imagine, a 60 kilo bomb at battle rating 4.7 is pretty lackluster, and it only contains 25 kilograms of TNT, meaning it will destroy your vehicle in a radius of 3 meters. As I said, pretty ineffective, not really any reason to use this plane at all, to be honest. And finally, we have the 250 kilogram Navy Type No. 25. You can only carry one of these bombs, but it contains 114 kilos of TNT, allowing it to destroy any vehicle within a radius of 7 meters. While this isn't bad, as I said you can only carry one, and a 7 meter explosive radius is quite small. But you know, it's a Zero, it's not really known for its ground attack, at least in War Thunder. Overall though lads, the firepower of the A6M6c is actually pretty decent. It's just let down. It's let down by its poor ground attack performance, and by its actual engine and flight characteristic performance itself. While the cannons are relatively slow firing, which is a little bit frustrating in scissor engagements where you need to get a lot of lead down range in a short amount of time, but they do hit very hard. If you can get an enemy 6, you can certainly destroy them in seconds. The three 13.2mm machine guns are very effective. They do set fires an awful lot. It's some sweet payback for all those fucking P-51s that have set you on fire with a single hit. But yeah, it's got good firepower. If you can actually get an enemy 6, you'll instantly vaporize them. Before we get on to the conclusion, let me know down below what you guys think about this vehicle, and what tank, plane or ship you guys would like to see reviewed next. Look, I don't really know what to say to you lads. It's just another example of Gaijin trying to not scam its player base, but certainly piss it off. Like, you can grind your ass off to unlock this A6M6c, but it's nowhere near as good as pretty much any other Zero in the game. It's certainly nowhere near as good as the A6M5 the other premium. Not only is that a rank 4, which means you can unlock rank 5 and below, but it's also, it climbs a lot better, it's the same top speed basically, it turns better. Granted, it does only have two 7.62mm machine guns instead of the three 50 cal essentially, but I'd take better performance over 3 better guns any day of the week. Pretty much the only good thing about the A6M6 is the fact it's a premium, so you don't get that ridiculously high repair cost with the other high-end Zeros. But that's where all the good stuff ends basically. Apart from the guns and the low repair cost, why bother and play this one? Just get yourself the A6M5. It's probably even cheaper as well, to be honest. I think it cost me about £10 or something, like ages ago. And if you do want a good Japanese grinder, then the J6K one's probably the best in the game at the minute. It's got 6 20mm cannons plus 2 13mm machine guns in the nose, and it's insanely good turn rate, and it's insanely powerful as well. It is battle rating 6.0, but Japan is absolutely dominant at that battle rating, so just get yourself that. I haven't checked the price, it might be really expensive actually, but there's not too much to say on the A6M6 in terms of positives. It just handles like a really heavy Zero basically. It takes the magic away from it. It's like getting a really big sports car. It's like buying a new, when you buy yourself a car and it drives really well, then all your mates get in it and it suddenly feels like a boat because there's so much weight in it. That's pretty much the A6M6c. It's the same Zero chassis, pumped full of guns that are frankly too big for the airframe. It's weighed it down, they haven't compensated with a better engine. So it's like the Zero was highly specified to be a turn fighter. It was light so that it had good range and good maneuverability. They put more weight into it. So now it's an average dogfighter, it's got average firepower, and it's still quite slow. All Zeros are pretty slow, but this one especially. So there's nothing, I would say it's a jack of all trades, but it's not even that. It's not good at particularly anything apart from it's fractionally better than average at turning. But again, there's no good in just being average as the boys. But anyway lads, don't grind this out if you really do want a premium. It's not worth it at all really. It's only rank 3 as I've said, so you can only get to rank 4. You're not going to be able to unlock the rank 5 jets with this one. So if you do want a premium Zero, get the A6M5 It's, like I said, it is cheaper. Well, thank you very much for watching lads. I hope this video did help you, and I'll see you in the next review.